about Aquarium Controllers. And obviously, we got the new Apex ELLE. Oh, I always get it wrong.
It's a EL.
EL, entry level. All right. So I have Terrence on today. Tell us a bit about that and kind of kick things off. So if you guys haven't seen it, it basically launched last night slash today in stores. And it's a new, cheaper, more affordable version of the Apex. And it has same brain, but you're just missing a couple of the ports on it. So it's a pretty good model for a lot of people. So Terrence, tell us a little bit about it.
So basically, for probably almost about 6 or 7 months now, we've started a customer feedback survey that goes out twice a year to all of our customers. And in that survey, we basically say, hey, from 0 to 10, would you recommend the Apex or Neptune systems to a friend? And then they get to choose like that 0 to or 1 to 10. And then there's one follow-up question that says, why did you choose that? Why did you make that choice? Whether it's positive or negative or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We get a ton of really great feedback, and vast majority positive. And the vast majority of people were like, God, I couldn't live without my Apex.
Mm-hmm.
The Apex just gives me no more anxiety. And there's all, we have good support and all these great things. Of course, there are negatives that are out there as well, and some of them absolutely valid. Obviously, this is what you want to hear from your customers so that you can just continually refine and make things better. But the one thing that really came out across the board from people was, and this is from people who are positive too,
Yeah.
was it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was something we really took to heart, in that, I know we've created something that has just tons of features, everything in the world in it. How can we do something and get the cost down so we can get more people in the Apex ecosystem, get them monitoring their aquariums for the things that matter the most to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
and do it at a price point that kind of seems ridiculous now, which is less than $500.
Yeah.
And so we started thinking about cutting out different parts and pieces that obviously cost money for us to put into the product. And I even considered having a version that did not have the Energy Bar 832. And because obviously there's a big cost in that component of the system.
Mm-hmm.
And in asking some of our customers and in thinking about it, we said, like, no, we can't do that. There's too much value for customers in that particular piece of the product. So that's how we end up coming to the conclusion that we can make an Apex that took out the salinity, took out the ORP, and took out the 0 to 10 volt ports on there, and more or less leave everything else the same, and do it for $300 less than the current Apex, which is a big difference in price, and should make a big difference for a lot of customers to be able to obtain the product.
Yep. Hey, Terrence, the EL comes with a temp probe, right?
The EL does come with a temp probe
Yep.
and a pH probe. So the rundown is the Apex EL has the Apex EL base unit, okay, which has 2 rows of connectors in it instead of 3. That third row of connectors that you see there with the salinity, ORP, and the 0 to 10 ports doesn't exist in the Apex EL.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes with the same temperature probe and same pH probe that you get with the top of the line Apex. It comes with your 7 and 10 calibration solutions, an Aquabus cable, and the Energy Bar 832, and a couple of mounting screws, obviously, to mount everything up with.
So, from my understanding, see if it's right, it's basically identical to the full one, minus the ORP, the salinity, and the 0 to 10 volt.
That's exactly right. Now, if you really want to take a look at it more closely, there is a comparison chart on the Apex EL webpage.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find what is your YouTube page so I can watch the comments again?
YouTube.com/ReefDudes, and it should just show up right away when it's live.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
God.
Nice and easy to remember.
Yeah, it should be, right?
Yep.
Except for me. I want to watch your comments come in too.
Yeah, perfect.
At the same time. But yeah, I mean, that's really what's what's involved in it. And one of the nice things, I got to shut off the sound too, don't I?
Yeah, so, make sure you mute the YouTube, or I get some crazy echo.
So yeah, I mean, that's really what we wanted to do. And if you want to add those things back in later on, you can. All you have to simply do is buy some of the extra modules and connect them up.
Mm-hmm. So, out of curiosity, if someone was to take the light or the entry level version, the EL, and turn it into a full Apex buying all those modules versus buying the full one up front, is there a big difference?
Let me see. Let me do the math. Let's see. That's 100, 225, 325, about $450, I'd say. That's
Okay.
about what it is.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just kind of curious how it works out. But no, on the flip side, I mean, I've never even used the 0 to 10 volt port, so to me, I don't really care about those. The ORP is the only one. Like, something's nice to have, but I use it more just for trending. Like, I don't actually do anything off of it more than just look at it. So to me, I think it's a great option, personally, because, like, my Radions, they have their own controller, or the WXM module, so the 0 to 10 I've never touched in my life. But I mean, some of the Kessels and stuff, that might be more important to them.
So I think there's reasons for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, when I take a look at it, I, of course, make use of all of those things in my reef setup. So I personally would not be satisfied with having just the EL.
Okay.
Because I do use salinity. It is consistent for me. It does work well. I do know when something's going wrong. I have a very large sump, and at the times I do run a filter sock on it. Sometimes it splashes over the side. And, you know, after 20 gallons, even out of my big setup, splashes over the side. Yeah, my ATO comes on and backfills that, and I do notice the difference and have to, you know, go down to my room and see what's going on.
Okay. That's fair.
But you know, so there are absolutely a lot of uses for these. I would not say that they're things that are so superfluous. Is that how you say it? That they have no need. The ORP port is something I absolutely just recently was, you know, seeing reduced ORP, and it's because I started running filter socks, and my filter socks weren't getting replaced fast enough, and I could see it right there in my ORP. I was like, wow. There's just there are reasons to have these particular probes and ports, but maybe for an entry level type person, a person who wants to get started, they should not be have a roadblock put up of price, and should at least have the basics anyway, if that would be the impediment for them getting an Apex.
Well, the one good thing is you can always buy the modules to add them on later for something you need.
And you don't, and you could buy just what you need too.
Yeah.
So like you said, there are some people who, you know, they want to control their Kessels, or they want to control, let's say their gyre pumps or something like that, and so they want to have the 0 to 10 ports. Well, yeah, they can spend $100 and they can get that access later on. They're still only at $600 instead of $800.
Yep. So someone's just asking, so I've never used the 0 to 10 volt ports. I know Kessels is the obvious one to me. What else can you run off them? Because I've seen that pop up a couple times.
So there is a page on our site called Apex Ready.
Yeah.
So you can go and you can look at the Apex Ready page and see all the different types of things that you can run. Now, pretty much anything that has a 0 to 10 input can be run off of them. But the Apex Ready page actually shows products that we've had in here. The manufacturers sent them to us. We run them through their paces, and they actually work according to spec. Because not all of them, just because they have the 0 to 10 port, work to spec. Some of them, you know, at 2 volts, they shut everything down. Or the 0 to 10 is actually from, you know, 70% to 100%, not even 30% to 100%. And so we actually go through and try to get some sort of a standardization so that our customers have an expectation that's met when they get an Apex Ready. Now, some of the other ones that are out there, like I said, there is the gyre, there are Tunza pumps, there's the Reef Octopus return pumps that work off of that. The skimmer pump works off of that for Reef Octopus. The ABIZ pump, which I run, amazing pump. I run that on it. So there are all kinds of devices that do run up. There's Orfec lights, there's Orfec pendant lights. Just quite a bit of 0 to 10 products.
Okay, perfect. No, that's good to know. Thanks for that. That expanded what I've thought you could use with it.
But the other thing to follow up on that is that it's true that there's a vast quantity of people who will never and have never made use of those particular ports, and they are paying for them.
Yep. Okay, that's fair. Another comment that's came up a couple of times now. Is there any hope of an EB832 for UE, so Europe, or UAE, which is Dubai and all the different places? Basically, yes. Is there going to be a version?
There is hope for a newer energy bar at some point.
Okay.
There is a natural progression that happens. The dilemma that we run into, and that I've told many of people, and many people don't like the answer, and I'm sorry. I wish there was infinite resources. But not every single product is equal. It's not equal in the number of customers that are out there to buy it. It's not equal in the cost to do the research and development, and it's not equal in the cost of the actual production of the parts and pieces. Okay. Many products in our industry are very simple to take overseas because it's simply exchanging out a power cord. So if you want your particular light fixture, your Ecotech light fixture, your Ecotech pump to work overseas, the majority of what needs to happen is just a power cord change. Mm-hmm. That's not the case with something that's an energy bar, for instance, that works on multiple voltages, that in various countries have to meet certain standards, that the plugs are actually different. Gosh, it would be so much easier for us to whip out an energy bar if all the 240 volt energy outlets were identical even, but they're not. So in addition to having the 240 volt market be so much smaller than the 120 volt market, it's divided up even more then, because we have the UK plugs, we have the Shuko plugs in the EU, we've got the Australian plugs, we've got the
you
Chinese
almost need like
plugs.
a modular plug socket you can just pop
Well,
in.
they have them, but the problem is that they won't pass certification. They're oftentimes kind of janky. And quite frankly, we could build, let's say, a Shuko style 240 volt energy bar and then ship adapter plugs with it for the UK. And you don't think our customers would run us off the flagpole over that? We'd hear never the end of that. Okay. And rightly so. That's not the right kind of solution, right? We want a solution that's the right kind of solution. So the dilemma is that we have a lot of products out there like the Trident, and like other products that are universal, that have application to customers all around the world, and have an overall customer size or customer base that far exceeds, believe it or not, the energy bar side of things. And the resources are not unlimited.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. We're focusing our resources towards those products. The other side of that coin that I like to ask people is because it's how much of the, where do you want to spend the dollar, or here's a quarter, where are you going to spend it, type of thing. The other thing I try to tell people is, okay, we're going to tell all of our customers out there, sorry, no Trident. We're going to go make a UK energy bar. How do you think that's going to be received?
Yeah. Biggest bang for your buck. I mean, it is a business at the end of the day, right? What
and it's not because we don't like people in the UK or we don't think that they're important. It's not that. It's that nothing is black and white. It just isn't. Yeah. There's a lot of work to actually build an energy bar, believe it or not. It is a significant amount of expense, especially if anybody looks at the Apex EL or the Apex. Take a look at the Energy Bar 832. I mean, it's custom molded design. I don't off the top of my head know how many separate custom molded parts there are there, but do a little investigative work and see what it costs to build molds these days, just for those parts. It's expensive.
So one, just quickly scroll by because it's already long gone, but does it have the 24 volt DC ports? Yes, I believe it is identical. Yes. EB832, right?
So the 832 is identical, and that's what I was saying, is that we were considering actually doing something similar to ironically what we were just talking about in the EU, which is okay, let's deliver the Apex, a reduced version of the Apex, or the same Apex with a reduced version of the Energy Bar 832, and that'll bring the cost down, because the equivalent cost, or MAP equivalent cost, before any kind of VAT or anything in the UK is like a $680 US cost. And so we were thinking, okay, well, we can bring down the cost a little bit that way, but no, we wanted to keep the Energy Bar 832 in this package.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's awesome. So you can still hook up all your accessories and get rid of power adapters with like a Dose or some of the power heads. So that's awesome. Another one that just popped by, which I know you got an answer for this one. Any plans to have the AI HD lights compatible at any point?
They are right now.
Yep.
So actually, yesterday we pushed out new code into Apex Fusion. That new code includes what we're deeming a public beta of the support for the AI Prime AI 26 and 52 HD lights, so that you can connect them. I will caution people a little bit that we've tested this in a lot of different environments, and our NSI guys have tested it also in a lot of environments. There are some routers out there that do not like the AI lights very well. And let's just say that the Wi-Fi on those particular lights for whatever reason is not quite as strong as maybe some other devices that you have. So in highly contaminated, or how would you call it, Wi-Fi environments, like multi-family dwellings and stuff like that, you may have more difficulty, with those lights, especially if they are not as close, because it's a little different methodology the way it's controlled. We're controlling the lights rather than dumping in a schedule.
Mm-hmm. So basically doing it live. Okay, I get what you're saying there. What else did I see? Scroll by. Would an Apex work on a step-down transformer, 240 to 110? I remember we lived in the Caribbean, used that to transformer and run everything we got from the US.
Sure, and I don't know how well it works or what models it works on. I do know that I've heard of people doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that it will not be covered by warranty, most likely. If you have some sort of a voltage spike issue or something like that occurs, it's usually not the greatest thing to do with a lot of electronics or high-end electronics. Mm-hmm. For instance, there's some generators, right, that don't have a really smooth inverter on the generator, mm-hmm. and they're not an inverter generator, so to speak, and those can actually wreak havoc with a lot of electronics.
Oh, good to know. Okay, another question from the chat. What's needed to add on a salinity and ORP probe down the road on top of the EL?
So if you wanted to basically make your Apex EL just like the top of the line Apex, you would have to buy a PM1, a PM2, an ORP probe, a salinity probe, and then and then the VDM module.
Okay, so you basically buy a module for each one plus the probe.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Any thoughts to add tab diffusion to make it better for people like myself to control multiple tanks?
Yeah, I know we've received a lot of feedback on this over the years. Mm-hmm. It's definitely something we've looked at. Part of the difficulty in what we do with our software is we have to somehow or other ride the fence of how do we make it easy, okay, and how do we give enough advanced features so people can, the smaller segment of people can have some of these advanced things to do. Mm-hmm. It's really difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. Mm-hmm. There may be some sort of a feature down the road, but at this point, it's nothing in the short term. I can tell you that. The good part is that you can expand the Apex and use it for multiple tanks. It's just not yet part of the user experience to make it easy to do so.
Yeah. If you got your tank side by side, just get a big Aquabus cable and another energy bar and pop her in.
But now there's the Apex EL, and it's less than $500, and you can have one on both tanks.
How much is just the power? How much is an EB832?
EB832 is $250.
Okay, so you're pretty much halfway there having a full-blown unit.
Oh, it totally makes more sense. Yep. If you want to do, so just to give you an idea, if you wanted to do pH, temperature monitoring on a second tank and have controllable outlets over there, in the simplest of way, you would spend, I don't know, what is it, $80 on a PM1. You'd spend another $30 on a temp probe. You'd spend another $70 on a pH probe. You're already at nearly $200 right there, and then you'd have to have the EB832. So you're almost there anyway. So yeah. It kind of makes more sense to just have a second Apex.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, that's fair. Especially if you want all the probes and monitoring on it, then it really makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Lots of EU questions. We definitely dug that one in. Okay, so question.
Yeah, I'm sure. I totally get it. They all think I don't love them, but I do. If they were only in our shoes to know, we would build it all if we possibly could. I mean, simultaneously, I can assure you.
So okay, I'm just trying to read this one from Tristan's Reef. Question for Terrence regarding the wave compatibility with the EB8. I plan to run 4 waves and heard some reports of waves that fail would temp offline other devices.
There is a situation where if you've got a really, really bad failure on a wave pump, mm-hmm. that it can shunt that particular power supply. What has to be realized is that inside the 832, there's a power supply that is very similar to the one that you have, like a power brick that you would have for other devices. Now, with other devices, you have one for every, let's say power head, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't have that same kind of problem, but the downside is that you have a lot of clutter and cables and whatnot. So there is a trade-off because you could have the same exact problem with any kind of a power head or product that would shut down the power supply due to some form of an overcurrent issue.
Yep. Okay. Is there going to be a new release of the top models?
I love this one. Your sales reps are annoying. I love live streams because I can just sit here and look at this and read these things and go, gosh, I want to know more.
Yeah. Tell us more.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you guys have any specific questions, let me know in the chat.
Apparently, and really what's the general controller discussion that we're going to have? It's great to talk about the Apex EL, but let's have that general controller discussion.
All right, guys. If any of you guys have a controller and experience and would like to join the Hangouts link, there it is in the chat. Feel free to hop on. So, because I know there was a bunch before about all the different, kind of comparing the different controllers. Any possibility of additional ports on the EB832 2-watt monitors, wattage monitors?
I don't even know what that
means. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean on that one, business.
I think maybe what they're trying to say is that will there be power monitoring on the one link or DC24 connections? Mm-hmm. And no, not at this time. I mean, one of the things it's not immediately apparent, but there actually is quite a bit of hardware to do the power and current monitoring per outlet. It's actually quite expensive hardware to make that happen. So it's not something that we have on those other connections because it would increase the cost pretty dramatically.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Okay, so he was talking about the DC24.
I think so.
Okay, makes sense. When the probes for alkalinity and calcium coming out? That means the Trident.
Yeah, he's talking about the Trident. So all hands are on deck here with the Trident. We've had a couple of setbacks. We're hoping to have it in the hands of our NSI guys, and hopefully, if he's nice to me, maybe the guy that's running this chat will actually get one in the NSI. But we're trying to get it to where we can get it out to our NSI team members as soon as possible. We already have started production on the components that we have, but it should be understood that unlike many other products out there in our industry, which our industry is not that large, we have tens of thousands of customers, and I literally have thousands of people who I know want to have this product, and we have to have it right because it's not going to be 50 or 100 people who are going to run into a problem that we can all of a sudden fix, really easily. It's we need to get every little detail worked out as much as possible before we push this product out the door. And it works. Technology works great, but technology to work and make something work on 1, 10, 50, or even 100 is different than making things work so that 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people have a great experience.
Yep. No, very true. Question from Kim. Before I go buy an Ekoral controller, will you ever release a new energy bar for Australia?
Didn't we just cover this?
Basically.
Before you buy an Ekoral controller. So the Ekoral's already got the 240 volt one. They're selling it right now on the market for Australia.
No idea.
We're having a controller discussion, so let's talk about things that exist. And if that's true, then awesome.
Yeah. To be honest, I think GHL is European, isn't it? They're from Europe.
They do. So we're talking about Ekoral. We're talking about Ekoral.
I have no idea if they do.
If somebody's going to talk to me about how they're going to go over to the Ekoral, let's make sure one actually exists. I don't know that one does, but maybe I can.
I don't think it does, but I'm looking on the website right now. Yeah, it looks like at the current moment, looks like there's one coming. It doesn't look like it's released.
Exactly.
There's a photo of it.
Right.
Real-time energy. Just scrolling through it. Yeah, so they don't have it now for sale, but it does show it in the photo of a European version. So
Sure. And the thing is that then there's the European version, and then there's, again, for these people, maybe I'm wrong, and I'll pose this to your audience, right? So would you be happy, everybody who's on 240 volt, having a everybody gets a Shuko outlet. So those guys in Australia, they get the Shuko outlet, which the guys in Australia are pretty, they're pretty laid back, so they're probably fine with it. The UK, they would have to use an adapter, and the Australians would have to use an adapter. Would they be okay with that? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. A lot of you 240 volt guys. Would that work? Little thicker plug, but aside from that, of course it has to. All right, so
I read the other one, says they're working on it. Says coming soon. So okay, we're working on it. Coming soon.
Yeah, so I don't know. There's a question for you guys. Would you care if there was, what would you call the plug? Shuko, something like that.
Well, Gal just said an adapter. No.
So does it mean you don't care, or you want one with no adapters? Because I mean that is probably the only easy way of doing it. I see Australia.
It takes one level of complexity out of the problem. I don't know that we would end up doing it that way, because I personally think it's a little more janky. I want to have something that fits each of the major regions for our products. But that, as I said, that does add a whole other level of complexity, because again, most people don't realize that even the depth on the outlets are different. So all the plastic has, there's not commonality between different pieces of plastic. Sourcing, lots of different dilemmas here.
Yeah, some of the comments, I don't want adapters.
Right.
Yeah. So I understand the slight battle there.
Right. And so the Ekoral guys will come out with one with a Shuko outlet, and then everybody will be pissed because it doesn't have the Australian outlet or the UK outlet.
I have no idea on the European outlets. I got absolutely nothing on this one.
No, I know. I'm just saying I get where it goes, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. All right, guys. So
then there'll be an Icelandic outlet, and those guys will be upset with me.
Well, you got to please them all, Terrence. You need 20 different power bars. Come on
now.
Yeah. Question: Neptune exploring the waters with respect to lighting products. Also, thought of accessories to mount the waves to allow more range of motion for placement, namely keeping the wire up top.
I mean, we don't really discuss any kind of products that we haven't already announced. That said, I think it's pretty straightforward that if there's a product that's going to be used, a major product that's going to be used on an aquarium, at some point it could be fair game, especially if it could take advantage of technology advances that we think we could add to the game, like we have with other products, whether it be the Wave product, some of the things that we did on there that are completely unique in the industry, or the core product, some of the things that we did on that. If we think that we can add our capabilities and technology to a key aquarium component down the road, it's certainly going to be fair game for us.
Mm-hmm. All right. So
there was a Greg Carroll comment in there somewhere. Does this new product kill off any other products, meaning end of production, not support? So what Greg's asking me is that are we going to stop selling the other products? I do believe in a not too distant future that the Apex Classic will go away. Part of that has to do with there's products still available in the channel that's for sale. There's product that we still have that will be sold. But at some point we have to end of life the different products, because they're just not supportable anymore for a myriad of reasons, getting parts, all kinds of things. So it's definitely something that's going to happen. Not only will we not make them available, but at some point they will be end of life where we won't be able to, support new updates and whatnot going forward.
Yep. All right. So this one's more for you, Terrence, because I'm not quite sure what ASM is offhand. What are some things people have done with the ASM? What are probes that have been connected?
So one of the ones that's very common to use right now. First of all,
quick question: what is ASM?
Yeah, so let me get that first.
Okay.
So, if you've seen our PAR monitoring kit, somebody needs to be muted. I think I keep hearing something in the background there. Is that Pelfrey?
Might be Mark. I'll mute him for now, since I don't see him in the camera. Okay.
So anyway, so the PAR monitoring kit that we have actually has as part of the kit what's called Advanced Sensors Module, or the ASM. The Advanced Sensors Module is a way that devices that work off what's called millivolt or 0 to 1 volt, These are input devices, 0 to 5 volt devices, and then with an adapter, a third-party adapter, what's called 4 to 20 milliamp devices. So all three of those are standard ways to get data out of data collection devices of various types. Now, for the average hobbyist, this is not something that they're going to make use of, except for instance, like in our PAR monitoring kit. Mm-hmm. That said, we do have some vertical integrators, basically people who take the Apex into other markets or ancillary markets to the hobby. For instance, we have Tenji, which is a high-end aquarium builder and exhibits builder out here in Carmel, who set up both like multi-million-dollar homes, but also museums and public aquaria exhibits. And for instance, you can look them up. They did the lobby tanks at Amazon.com, and they did these beautiful Amazonian tanks and used the Apex stuff on them. So they integrated into their products. Now, one of the ways that they utilize the ASM is they actually have a sensor you can get for about $300 or $350. That's an ultrasonic level detector sensor that can be set up to use 0 to 5 volt output, and they use that for things like water changes. They use it for water levels in automatic top-off cisterns that they have and things of this nature. So that's one example. But you can go out, I think, is it called Sensor Mart, or I'll have to think of what it is. But there's a couple of online places that just sell tons of different kinds of sensors that you can get. And if you look for those things, zero to millivolt, 0 to 1 volt, basically, 0 to 5 volt, or 4 to 20 milliamp, it can work with the ASM and the Apex.
Interesting. How have I not known about this?
So there's lots of devices. There's lots
okay.
of really cool things.
No, that's actually, I might have to play with one of these now. Okay, that's good to know. I can have all these extra potential options to mess with now. This is dangerous.
Oh, there's all sorts of goodies out there. The part that people might not like, though, is that these are priced towards people, again, in vertical markets, not hobbyists. And maybe they'll have an appreciation for how cheap the Apex really is when you see everything that you get in an Apex, when just the sensor for doing one little thing will cost you like $900.
Yeah, it's a good chunk. It's okay. It's a good thing I like to build things. So we got Mark on. How's it going, Mark?
Oh, you're muted still.
Oh. Here, there you go. Mark, welcome back.
Yep.
Perfect. So you, sir, since we were talking about GHL earlier, I know you have an Apex and a GHL.
Yeah, I spent some time with Apex. The Apex Classic, though, I was not able to try out the Apex newer one, the 2016, but I have been doing the ProFlux 4 from GHL for the last since about November. I wanted to give a different controller a try that is pretty new to the North America region, at least. So.
Nice. So what's kind of curious, like, what's been your experience on the two different controllers? Like, is there, in your eyes, any big things, or are they both very similar, just different way of doing it, or?
At the end of the day, yeah, they're a very similar product. They have a lot of the same controls, take care of the same systems the same way, but they are two completely different languages.
Yeah.
The way that I like to explain when people are asking me about it is, I honestly, I wish I would have learned GHL first. The Apex language is much easier to handle, so by learning Apex first, then I went into GHL. It was like learning English, and then when you're 30 years old going out to learn Spanish. It was much more difficult of a language to acquire. But in all, it's been an interesting experience doing the conversion between the two. In the long run, the Apex is definitely much more user friendly for the base. There is a lot more information on the GHL. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've never touched or used a GHL, so that world's all new to me. So it's kind of interesting.
I mean, from my perspective, as a manufacturer and with them, in the same space as us, I also go out and speak at clubs and organizations on basically using aquarium control and monitoring to have a better aquarium in general. And their product is the only one because I try to be somewhat agnostic in my talks, because I'm really trying to advocate for the segment more than I am trying to advocate for our brand. And that is the only brand that I really have strongly advocated if you are looking to make a choice along with ours, because the other choices that were out there, especially in the mid to higher end, you just forget it, right? And it should be said, a lot of this, a lot of the reasons for this is because companies like ours and companies like GHL have been around a long, long time, right? And a lot of the newer stuff that comes along, these are people who they really don't understand, what's involved in doing this, and what it's like to walk the walk between making something super easy and also giving people a lot of those more advanced features that they want to get, and be able to offer all of that to them. And so a lot of the things that you see, they come and go. Every year, there's a couple of others that we hear about, right? What is it, the Reef Bit or Fish Bit or something like that? You had that one come around for a while, and then we have a Reef Palm or something else that came along, and of course, then we have DA, who just met their demise, right? They're gone. And so it's a lot more difficult to do this for our industry, and do it both easy for some people and offer a lot of capabilities for others.
Yeah, no, very true. So so Mark, for you, are you still currently running both controllers, like one on different tanks, or just ones you have run?
No, I actually, part of the finances for the GHL was to sell off some of my Apex gear. Obviously, controllers are quite expensive, so I had done the trade-off. I was actually looking at both because I originally wanted to get the 2016 Apex, but right before I pulled the trigger on that, the Canadian distributor of GHL had actually lowered their prices to be more in line with the actual Apex module. The full GHL ProFlux 4, I think, only cost about between $50 to $100 more Canadian to do the two. So in my history in the hobby, I like to try new things that normally isn't out there and things that people just aren't aware of. So instead of going for the Apex 2016, I decided to go for the ProFlux 4 there.
Yeah. Okay. And with
Now,
that, are you doing any kind of weird, crazy, custom, non-normal things that you've come up with it?
Not yet. I've been lucky so far. Everything, once it's been set up, has been pretty calm. Just your regular triggers, your temperature triggers and emails. I haven't got into too many advanced programming as of yet. I'm hoping to get into that come this fall when things kind of taper off a little bit. I wanted to give a couple months of just enjoying and learning how to use the controller and being comfortable with it. And then, of course, now we know the summertime comes and everyone's too busy doing their summer things. So I look forward to trying a little bit more and sitting down and checking things out come this fall. But again, even the advanced language I personally found easier when I was programming the Apex than the GHL. But I think a lot of that is just the bare fact that I'm learning a whole new language. So.
Okay.
hey, Devin.
Yep.
Devin.
Yes.
This would be a good time also to kind of get a kind of, I think, a level set between the two products in terms of how you interface with the products. Because, myself, I think that there's I think, and I don't think it's just with this product. I think we can throw the Ekoral guys into this mix too, which is, I think that a lot of people walking into this think that it's the same across the board, that all of these products kind of work the same. They all you access them kind of the same way. So it's, you just do it. And it's one of the places where I know our product is, has an extreme strength over and above everybody else. From the get-go, our product itself, like others, does have its own, its own web server inside, so it can be run independently of the internet altogether. That's a first distinction to understand amongst aquarium controllers in general. I'm not talking specifically about GHL or anybody, but just in general. The idea that you do not have to have the cloud to operate at any time or program or set up or anything the devices is a big deal. And people should know that. going into it, and they're not all the same in that regard. Let's put it to you that way.
As on that note, I kind of agree a good chunk with a lot of the new devices are cloud based only with their specific app, which can be a pain. If there's ever an issue on their server, that means you're SOL, right? If you don't
Well,
have a way of
yes.
dealing
Not
with
only
it locally.
that, what's even worse is when they go bye-bye, like DA just went bye-bye, so does your system becomes a brick at that point.
So do they not
Because their
have
server's shut down and you're out of luck. You have a brick. You have something that is absolutely no use whatsoever. So, for instance, if the Ekoral guys do not have a built-in web server into their product, and those guys go away, 6 months or a year from now, you bought a brick.
I did ask him about it. You can connect to it locally because I actually mentioned that. I'm like, ooh, that's a good point.
So you can set up the whole thing locally, because I don't see that in any of the instructions.
Yeah.
So
they didn't have it in there.
Yeah, so you might want to follow that up with, okay, how do I get in there and actually access that locally?
I'll unplug my Wi-Fi later and test it.
Yeah, because it'd be interesting to me. But anyway, my point is that the access is completely different. And then the next thing is when it comes to setting up the devices themselves, what people want to use to set up their system, their aquarium controller and monitoring system. I can speak for our product, which is pretty much everything that's out there, whether you use a tablet, whatever computer you use, whatever type of device you use, you can set it up and you can use it from that device. And believe it or not, 98, 99% of it now you can actually do across the cloud as well. So you don't even have to access it locally. And so that's also kind of, I think, an important factor for people to consider when they're looking at some of these devices, because some of them, I think the GHL one, for instance, you have to do some things through a direct connection only through PC software. Isn't that correct, Mark?
Yes, you're right.
So you can't do it over the internet, right? You got to connect directly to it, right?
Sure. There is a recent update to the GHL cloud-based software that's actually opened up the majority of the control back to the cloud-based, much like Apex Fusion. The only limitation I've really found so far has been the outlet power monitoring, because although they offer it as well, much like the EV832 offers the power monitoring, the only way you can view that is by direct connecting to the GHL module by hooking a computer up directly to the module. So unlike the Apex, even the old web pages, where you could sign into the web pages remotely from another PC anywhere on the internal network, with the GHL, you either have the cloud-based or you do have to be directly connected to it, which is has been one struggle of me, considering that there's no computer in that room. But
and it's also only PC-based, right?
Correct. To run it on a Apple computer, you would need to use a third-party software, I believe Wine or something along those lines in Apple, that allows you to talk to Windows programs.
Correct. And what about and the other thing too is that with a good cloud system, and I haven't run this on the GHL one, I'll admit, but on a really good cloud system, they offer also multiple ways for you to get your alerts. So you can get your instant notifications through iOS, for instance. You can get your emails, or you can get text messages. All three are an option. And the other thing too to look at with this is now you don't have to, at least with our product, obviously, you don't have to set up a web server. an email server settings or any of those kinds of things. It just works directly. So I don't know if you can comment on that, Mark, or not, because I haven't done that lately.
Not in depth, no, I can't. I just have the regular alert set up to send me emails for notifications. So, and even that I haven't really gotten lately. So so it's been a while since I even tested that out.
So you had to set up an email server connection to do it, or?
No, it was, as far as I remembered, it was just an easy, quick connection there. I'd have to look at the here again.
Like I said, I didn't know, and the GHL it has an app too, right?
Yeah, so a lot of things have changed with GHL just even over the last 3 or 4 months. So if you were introduced to it earlier, everything almost has been redesigned the last little while, and it's really opened up a lot more doors. But again, setting everything up and programming it all and getting things set up by far was much easier when I set up my Apex, and setting up through Apex Fusion as well. So
do they have an app too? They have like an iOS app and an Android app that connects into the cloud, or how does that work?
They do. It's primarily used, or at least in my experience in looking at it, has been through using just the dosers. I haven't really gotten into it. I'm one of the people who enjoy using it through the web browser. Like even Apex Fusion, I have no problem when I didn't have an app for that because I solely used the web pages just for a shortcut on my desktop. So I don't really touch the apps very much. I just find it a lot easier to use it through the web pages. So
No, I hear you. I hear you. No, that's interesting information.
Hey, what's going on, Jeff? So Jeff joined as well. I know, Jeff, you're all over probably every Apex module out there.
I do have a sickness. I am
An
an
addict?
addict to automation.
He's a control freak.
Yes, he is.
To say the least. Terrence, I should own stock in your company, my friend. I've paid many of your light bills indirectly, I'm sure. But
Well, we appreciate all our customers, that's for certain.
So I'm also one of those who has. So currently, I'm running Apex and a Profilux, and basically 100% because I am an addict. And so when the whole Profilux 4 thing came out, I was interested in it, and I don't know, it's just an outlet for my need to automate things. And so I can tell you 100% that the Apex is, like, out of my personal experience, I would never recommend a Profilux to anyone I know, just based on the user interface. Now, you're hard pressed to find anyone saying anything bad about it online, just from my own research. But I don't know, man. Like, and I'm sorry, what was the other guy's name that was talking about the
Mark?
Profilux? Mark.
Yeah.
Like Mark was saying, I mean, it truly is like growing up speaking, English, and then at 30 years old trying to learn Russian. It's just insanely different. Whereas, like, I've had to spend many, many hours on the phone with DHL customer support to get basic stuff going. Like, forever, I just couldn't get my Wi-Fi going, and we got it set up initially, and then there was just ongoing issues. I could never consistently get connected. I had to use a crappy little Surface, laptop, because, like Terrence was saying, it only works on PCs. I'm a Mac guy, and so there's no easy way to use it. They've updated their web interface, and it is faster, but then before, like, it was like unusably slow trying to do things, where I would consider Apex Fusion, like, it is your primary interface. There's nothing local you need to do with an Apex. And so to do anything serious, I feel like you need to plug in direct connect to the Profilux to get stuff done quickly. And I've got super fast internet at my house, so it's not an internet thing. It's just, the interface is not, it's light years behind Apex Fusion. So, I mean, I gave it an honest shot because I was very curious, and I'm running the Cage Director with the Profilux, and once it's up and running, I mean, it works great, but I don't know, man, just everything takes so much effort is how I would describe it. Like, everything is laborious to do the most basic stuff, and I don't know, it just feels like it's a 1980s interface compared to the Apex Fusion. Like, there's just no comparison at all.
That's great feedback. That's awesome feedback. And one of the things, I keep hearing about programming and whatnot too, which, I hate that word. I've hated that word since I started to work for the company, and have tried to move us to basically bifurcate kind of the product into an easy to use product, like I said, and a product that still has a lot of that available for those people that want to have the advanced functionality. But what I am so much proud of for our company, and what I'm so proud that our developers have done and continue to stick with, is this whole idea of tasks. I don't know if Devin, if you can throw that up on the screen or not.
I will give you guys that one. The tasks has made it extremely easy to program anything.
Tasks is something that a lot of people who have an Apex don't even know it exists for some reason. That's probably because I didn't do my job well enough.
Here, I'll pull it.
But basically, if you can think of something that an average user needs to do when they set up their aquarium, or to monitor or manage their aquarium, it's likely in the task list or will be soon. And then there's some more advanced things that are a little bit more common that people might want to do, but they are a little more advanced to get them set up, that we've also automated in there, so that you don't have to do any programming. The one most recently that we added is the manual water change. You're like, manual water change? Why do you want a manual water change? Well, the manual water change was added at the request of one of our customers, and we thought it was an interesting idea because the Trident system is so popular now that people go and go for a long time and get their ICP, and they get back the results, and then it says, hey, I need to do 2 or 3 water changes, right? And how do I do that? Well, I don't want an ongoing water change, but once in a while I need to do that water change, and I hate lugging buckets, and I want to have water on hand anyway for emergencies. How do I do it? And with the manual water change one, you basically can set it up ahead of time or what have you, and then at a push of a button from a feed mode, now do a manual water change.
Yeah. Can I make a special request for a future of a manual dose? Like if I just want to say dose
that's actually
20
on the
mil,
list.
Okay,
so
awesome.
It is on the list. We do have the ability to do that, and we do know that we need to get that done. So I expect that to be out there in the list at some point. But you can see here as he's, I'm not in real time because of the magic of Devin. But you probably saw as he was scrolling through some of these things, very common things like setting up a leak detector, or setting up my return pump, or setting up the clock, or setting up my lights, or my heater, or my chiller, or what have you. All of these things take you step by step in a step-by-step process to go through and set these up, and they end up setting up all the configuration for you for those devices. And this is how we're trying to innovate and make this easier for everybody, so you don't have to do those things. You don't have to do that programming.
Yeah, it has definitely a huge difference versus the old classic in terms of programming. It's way, way easier. Now, Jeff, I have to ask a question. You said you're running the Apex and the JHL together right now. Is that just because you have the cage director on there?
So I bought I've run the Apex for, I don't know, 5 years now.
Yeah.
And so I bought the Profilux as an addict, trying to fill an itch kind of thing. Just because I was curious about it. And so I bought it, and it sat in a box for like 6 months because I didn't need to set it up, and so it was more effort than setting up the Apex. So I just didn't do it. And so when the director came out, that's what forced me to get it out of the box and try to get it set up. But yeah, it's just now that it's running with the help of lots of support from GHL, it's great. But
is it just because you're running 2 controllers together, right?
Yeah, simultaneously.
Is it anything in form of like a backup of each other, or is it strictly to control your cage, Guardian?
So the main reason I bought it, and again, like there's no reason to run 2 controllers at all. Like it's just absurd. But with that being said, I bought it because if you've seen my channel, everything I do on this tank is absurd.
Yeah.
So I've got,
hey, give a channel to your plug to your channel, man. Stop right there. What's the channel so everybody can
daily reefing? I just put it in the chat.
Daily reefing.
Yeah. I think you actually had 2 cage directors for some reason, if I recall. But yeah, you have a massive tank, and your setup's extreme with every toy imaginable. It's a great watch.
If you like automation, go check out my channel. I used to do industrial automation in the oil field, and so when the oil field tanked, I had to switch careers, and so this tank was my outlet to fill that desire for technology. And so anyway, coming from industrial side, like redundancy is just like you have to have redundancy. And so in my mind, the Profilux was similar to some of the industrial PLCs we use out in the field. And so I was curious about it, and I've got so much invested in my tank, 500-gallon reef, that I thought, because every once in a while, equipment has issues. So I thought it would be nice to have a backup system to display readings just in case. And so that's how it got started. But yeah, man, it's just I don't know, like there's no other way to say it, but like Apex is plug and play. And I mean, coming from someone who's done industrial hardcore automation for I think 7 years, and then the Apex for 5 years, it's not like I don't know how to program basic stuff, but like literally it was just such a pain to get the Profilux programmed. And maybe it's just me, I don't know.
Okay.
But it's night and day compared to the Apex, where you can literally sit down with the Apex, never have done any of it,
Mm-hmm.
and within a couple hours you'll get it. You'll stumble your way through getting it operational without a doubt. And with the
Okay.
Profilux, man, it's just like I had to get support on the phone because I was like, I literally like it doesn't make logical flow sense when you're trying to do stuff in there. It's you have to learn the language, like
Mm-hmm.
Mark said. So
Okay.
I
that
did.
was my take on it.
Sorry to cut in there. I did have a opposite situation with my GHL. Um, I found I did have a lot of issues, like you had admitted yourself. It's a lot different to do. They did find they had a lot of useful YouTube videos, but I didn't actually need to contact support. So, of course, with any system, it depends on the system. Sometimes there's issues, sometimes they're not. But yeah, it's set up just fine for myself.
Mm-hmm.
When you set yours up, were you already had you already taken down your Apex and sold it?
Oh, looks like he's talking to the kids.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's muted. All right, he's got the kids in there. Okay, so another one actually. So I find this really interesting now because Mark had GHL and Apex. You've had GHL and Apex, and Reefing with O, I believe, has also used GHL and Apex. I'm 100% relying on you guys because I've never used GHL before. So, Seymour, how's your
Yes,
experience
sir.
with different controllers and fill us in?
Um, I am a Mackie user at home,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to go out and buy a copy of Windows. Like, I think you need to go out and buy a copy of Windows to use any GHL software because you need Windows to set it up.
Oh.
So that was like I tried a GHL years ago and it was like that, and then I bought another GHL piece of equipment, a doser, which I
Mm-hmm.
like last year, and it was the same thing. I had to go and install Boot Camp and get it to work. I mean, I was an IT guy at one point. When was the last time you had to select like USB ports and USB port speed and stuff like
It's Windows
that?
XP days,
I
buddy.
mean, in September 2017, when I was setting up a controller, the fact that I had to like know USB speeds and things like that, like
Sorry.
I was like, I mean, once I got over the frustration of that day, I mean, I think I like the product. It's small and
Mm-hmm.
it took up less space versus, the two dose units I was doing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I needed it. Space is an issue, but I mean, that I still can't get over that. I mean, years ago, yeah. So yeah, and a ReefKeeper. I mean, it's not even. I don't even think it's even worth mentioning now. I think when I
Mm-hmm.
finally decided to go with a full Apex controller,
Mm-hmm.
I think all my friends were using Digital Aquatics ReefKeepers, but I chose Apex. I don't even remember why. To be honest, I think I went to Manhattan Aquariums and Tom convinced me. I think that's how I met Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And like Apex Fusion got released a few months after that, and I knew I made the right decision. Like that was the right decision right there. I think Tom convinced me because it had like at least it had a built-in network port.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tom convinced me, and I mean I love my Apex. I like GHL. It's just the user interface. My wife, who is not into reefing like I am, she would never be able to set up a GHL controller. Like she would return it. Like I think that's my baseline to see if any piece of soft like she wouldn't be able to set it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. Now, do you still have that now, or you used to have it?
I don't have the digital aquatics anymore.
Yeah.
But the Profilux I don't have it, but I do
Okay.
have the doser. I do
Mm-hmm.
have the GHL doser. And it's the same thing. Like I don't think you can set up a GHL now without having Windows, without downloading a piece of software, installing it, running it on Windows. And I think over the last year it's gotten a little bit better, where even the web services now are a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know, man. In today's day and age, the fact that you have to jump through that to get a piece of equipment running,
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of that.
So am I correct also? I think I just read this recently too. So the newer Profilux does not have an actual Ethernet jack on it. It only is Wi-Fi. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a little chocolate and a little bit strawberry.
Oh, yeah?
That's just like chocolate.
Muting you, Mark.
I don't. Is that true?
Apparently.
No,
Mark, I
it's
muted you just in case you're
I'm
still there. Unmute yourself if you want to talk.
I'm letting you. Yeah, I'm letting you know it's true because I had major Wi-Fi issues, and I wanted to throw it out the window because I couldn't just plug it in.
I've never gotten my Wi-Fi on my GHL controller to work. By the way, I just ended up crimping like my own. I just ended up buying some cables and just plugged it in. It was
Yeah, I mean,
more reliable, and it's just. But I never got the Wi-Fi to work.
I mean, to GHL's credit, like, I mean, they're always releasing updates, trying to better this stuff. But it's like at some point, like, geez, like just make the crap work. Let me just set it up and be done with it. Instead of having to update the Wi-Fi module and all this stuff. I mean, I don't know. It was very frustrating for me. Like, and again, GHL, their support was fantastic, but I mean, there's no universe that exists where I would recommend anyone go through that when you could buy an Apex for the same price.
I mean, in all fairness, guys, I mean, from my perspective, and I work for the competing company, right? I do believe that the hardware from GHL is good. It's decent hardware. I do believe that that they've got a pretty good handle on that. But software is hard, and making things super easy is hard. And the perspective, just like the perspective from us trying to do things for people over in Europe from the United States or from Canada, right, is different as we go over, that direction. There are some of those same cultural differences too when it comes to technology and whatnot coming this way, and some of that does take effect in some of the products, and GHL, is probably included in one of those. That's a fact. I mean, it's not just GHL. It's a lot of companies over the years I've worked for where we've done stuff, technology wise, and said, isn't this awesome? And bring it over to, to Europe. And they're like, what? You guys are out of your mind. This is not how we do things here. And then reverse is often true.
For sure.
No, it's interesting to hear the different things. I know GHL has its own little following, and then just hearing all the
one of the other
interface.
really interesting things to understand here too, and it's not me trying to brag or anything like that. It's just a fact, is that we have a large number of customers, a significantly large number of customers, especially as compared to any other, similar or competing product that there is out there. And so then that has two sides to that coin. Number one, if you go out to our forum, you will see thousands and thousands of people helping each other. And if you need an answer for how to do something on an Apex, you're going to find it really quickly because there's just tons and tons of people, right? But you can probably at the same time tell the difference on the other side with, let's say, GHL, or even go take a look at Ekoral right now, right? Go take a look at their forum in Reef to Reef. There's like a sum of 46 posts in 2 months or something. The volume that we have means also that when we have any kind of a problem, it is 10, 50, 100 times as big of a problem as the next biggest guy, simply because of how big our customer base actually is.
If something breaks, you're going to have a lot of people screaming rather than a handful.
Oh, it's absolutely true.
Yep.
It's funny, Terrence, that you mentioned the forums because I've been an Apex user since the first iteration of it, and one of the coolest things that I ever saw happen on the Neptune forums was that there was a large thread about things that you want Apex to do. Things like the logbook and recording your testing parameters and stuff like that, charting all that information, and you guys actually went ahead and implemented it. It was kind of like a back and forth directly with your guys that were actually doing a lot of the development. And my experience with GHL was while setting up GHL for a friend of mine who opted to get that instead of the Apex. I'm a hardware guy, and I felt like I was troubleshooting the GHL to set it up rather than just setting something up that I felt should have worked out of the box. But during that setup, I did encounter some issues that were obvious bugs. So, being a hardware and software guy, I immediately sent that over to GHL and said, hey, I found something really bad in your controller. I think you guys should address it as soon as possible. Here's what I did. Here's how to recreate it. I literally got nothing back from them. It's been like 2 years and they've never responded back to that email with me telling them, I know how to break your controller by sending one command. and they've never responded to it. And I was like, wow, that wasn't a good sign for me, in terms of support, and interaction with them.
I
I've
will
never had that
say,
experience with Apex.
yeah. So I had something similar with my my Proflex. I've got an expansion box, which is like like a breakout box kind of thing. It's more ports. And I had an issue with a certain card that I was running on there for the GHL lights I was using at the time, where that card wouldn't work in the expansion box. It had to be on the base unit. And so I sent that over, and it did get ran up the chain. And unlike Tristan's experience, and this was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago, they did get back to me. And another thing, so I had 6 of the GHL Mitris lights, and I had a tough time with them as well. They just didn't really meet my expectations. So I listed those for sale on Reef to Reef, and I guess one of the GHL employees saw that and contacted me and asking why I was selling them. And the president of the company actually emailed me and asked me why I was selling it and was there something they could do to troubleshoot and stuff. So, you know, I find their company is fantastic, and I think their hardware is fantastic. It's just they have a long way to go to match the ease of an Apex. I'm sure reliability is good with it. It's very similar to industrial PLCs that I worked with. But with those, you had to either be experienced or you had to go to training to learn how to operate a PLC in the industry. And it's a very similar thing where I don't know. I don't know how people just go with it, the only caveat I'll say in my situation is I wasn't, in a desperate need to get the Proflex hooked up because my Apex was running my system, and this was a secondary thing. So if I was desperate and had no automation on my tank, I might have been quicker to dig in and learn the stuff. But at the same time, you don't have to do that with an Apex. And I don't want to sound like a fanboy, but it's the facts. Apex is light years ahead as far as usability, in my opinion.
Hey, we got a question up there. I did see one talking about, are the Orfec version 4s compatible? This is another good topic in controllers, in my opinion. We spoke on it briefly, is the interconnectivity. We talked earlier about the 0 to 10 volt stuff and the AI stuff. And I did get this question, I think, out on one of the forums today that I responded to. But one of the things that we really are committed to is to create this one-stop place that you can do everything about your aquarium in one app. I often liken it to the, you want a multi-remote on your home entertainment center because you don't want to have 12 remotes and you always lose the one in the sofa that you need the most. That's generally what happens with all of these different IoT type devices, right? And by us rolling them all together into your one Apex Fusion interface, it allows you to use the products that you want to use, and they can be disparate from Neptune stuff, and have it in one place. And to do that, we've created this kind of program that we call IOTA, Internet of Things Aquarium. And it's a subset of what we have called Apex Fusion, which in the past was a myriad of other ways to interconnect, and it still exists. For instance, the 0 to 10 or the WXM and whatnot. And with IOTA, what we're doing is, if a manufacturer is a top line manufacturer selling many thousands of units, right, and they have the ability for us to connect to their product, through the network, right, we can evaluate that and do that. And that's what we did with the AI product. On the other side, we have a lot of other smaller guys who we're not going to, for a few hundred customers or whatever, go ahead and try to make our stuff integrate with theirs. But we have a methodology that they can integrate with us by incorporating an API that we have for IOTA into their product and creating an Apex mode where the product basically goes up on the network, says, hey, I'm an IOTA product, and then the Apex can go find it, connect to it, and then control it like a light or a pump. And so when you ask the question about the Orfec, we do have Orfec lights that are 0 to 10 volt that are Apex ready. The one in particular that you're talking about, though, they have not decided to use the API that we have. I don't exactly know why. I don't know if it's because they're using a Bluetooth interface. I haven't really looked at it. I don't know if it uses Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. Maybe somebody else can give me information on that. But it is up to these companies and whether or not they want to integrate with our stuff, and we hope that they do. We know that their customers hope that they do.
So, question
Hey,
in the.
Terrence,
Oh, sorry.
I
Go
got a
ahead.
quick question for you. Salinity probe. So I've calibrated my salinity probe, and I've tested with multiple utensils to verify my salinity specific gravity. So I'm running right around 35 ppt, and like right now, look on Apex Fusion, I'm at 42.3, and I calibrated, I don't know, a few months ago kind of thing, but this has been a pretty steady thing. Like, are there causes that you can eliminate that throw off salinity?
Yeah. So I mean, and we've gone over this a few times, because where it runs and it's running well, it runs well, right?
Right.
Really, the an EC or electroconductivity salinity, right, probe is something that's susceptible to a couple of things that can throw it off. Number one, if any kind of microbubbles end up on the probe surface, then it affects it, and it will affect it to the downward side. Okay, which means that if you calibrated it correctly, and all of a sudden in your sump or what have you, you get bubbles, and instead of 35, it'll creep down to say 24 or something like that. The reverse of that is that when you are calibrating, if you have microbubbles when you have it in the calibration solution, then you will also have a problem when you then put it in your tank, and it will show artificially high, because you told it what it saw as, say, 25, right, because of the bubbles on it, is actually 35. And then you put it in your tank of 35, then it says 45, right? Or something thereabouts. That is another problem. Another problem is with interference from other devices, especially high voltage DC devices. So if you have DC pumps, for instance, like the ABIZ or the Red Dragon, those can cause problems with noise, electronic noise and whatnot. The last thing is the temperature of the calibration solution compared to the temperature of your tank. So if it's dramatically different, then you will also see something that is not the same level. And it can amount to that much,
So I run both a Biz and a RD230 Red Dragon pump in my sump.
Yeah, so I run an ABIZ A400, okay? And I can tell you right now that it does interfere. Now, what's really good about it is that it interferes consistently. So unless you're using the ABIZ, for instance, as a closed loop where you're varying the flow on it, if it stays pretty much at the same rate all the time, you can turn that thing on, right, and get your tank to the 35 ppt. Use your tank water as the calibration solution, and unless the ABIZ goes off, it will have the right salinity value.
Would a grounding probe?
No, because it's not. It's in the air.
Not
it's
voltage.
No. It's EMI.
Okay.
And it's because if you look at the cord on an ABIZ, you'll notice it's super skinny, right? That's because it's running high voltage, right? So that they don't have to run so much current through it.
I got you.
And because it's so skinny, it doesn't have that much shielding that they really need to have on it, and therefore it creates a ton of noise.
Now, devil's advocate, is there a way to add more shielding to the salinity probe so it's less acceptable to all those other products?
I know there are people that are playing with that. It's definitely something that I think you could probably DIY and try out. It is something we probably should look at here and see if there's something we can do. Shielding is not a panacea, though. Actually, shielding can cause problems just as much as it solves them in certain environments. So,
no, good to know.
Hey Terrence, what do you usually offer? Like, what suggestion do you usually offer when someone asks about battery backups? Because the one thing that I would really like is, in the event of a power outage, that my EB832 knows that, well, there's a power outage, and only supply power to either my return pump or my waves. And other than plugging the whole thing,
Right. So the answer to that really is not something that is a what I would call the basic user answer. Okay, there's not like a little plug and play solution that's going to make all that work. Okay, it is going to require a little bit more effort. I haven't done it yet on my system, but what I'm planning on doing is something very similar to what you would have in an RV. which is have an automatic transfer switch, basically a bank of batteries that have a trickle charger on them. And with that automatic transfer switch, when the power goes out, it's just going to flip over to those batteries, which are on an inverter or have an inverter on them. And there you go. That's pretty much how I'm going to do it on my system. There is no real cut and dry, easy way. As far as keeping the Apex online, though, if you want to get alerts and whatnot, definitely can get a any kind of a UPC. It doesn't draw that much power, right? And run both your router and your Apex on it. If it's in another room, run two UPSs and run those like that.
That's what I do.
If you run devices off of your 832 on a UPS, you're not going to get a ton of runtime out of it. It's just not the way to go about doing it. You might get an hour or two of decent runtime, depending on what you have running on there, and how big the UPS is.
Yeah, on the whole transfer switch type thing, I mean, you could probably build a pretty basic one using a couple of relays if you want to get...
Well, the automatic transfer switches are not that expensive. You can get an RV automatic transfer switch it's a triple ladder transfer switch where you can actually have, more than just the batteries. You can actually have your generator hooked up to it so that when it's been out for an hour and a half, you can go start your generator and it'll automatically switch to the generator and you don't have to touch anything.
Nice. That could be a good option to do. You got my
I do
wheels
love the
turning.
heartbeat feature on Fusion. That's pretty handy to not have to, worry about a power supply plug. Pretty great.
Do they have that feature on the GHL, by the way?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know.
It'd be part of the cloud stuff, I guess, if it did.
Yeah, I don't know, because alarms, man, that's a whole another pain to try to get alarms set up. So I don't know if it's in there or if it's part of their cloud in like y'all. So I don't know. It's a good question.
Guys, I have only time enough for one more question. I did have a hard stop at about 4:20. I told Devin. So if anybody wants to fire me one more question before I head out, Devin, if you want to fire me one more question, I can do it. And then you guys can all talk about me after I leave. And then I'll have to go look at it on replay and say, damn you all.
I don't know. I think you covered everything, at least that I have.
Okay.
Anyone else? Last call? Any questions?
Go check out the Apex EL. Tell your friends about it who always said it was way too expensive to have an Apex. And because I don't know what they're going to say now. But yeah, I'll try to come back for another one of these. You guys can ask me questions. Send us anything you want through the normal channels at Neptune. Thanks for all you guys that are customers of ours. And for those of you that are running other stuff right now, I hope you're customers of ours at some point down the road. Take care, guys.
Thanks for hopping on, Terrence.
Yep.
Cheers. Lots of fun. So it's kind of interesting that both of you guys that joined both have or had GHL and Apex. So.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, Devin, I always felt like people who ran GHL were the folks who hated Macs and hated Windows and said, you know what, I'm only going to run Linux because it's the only system for me. You know, and they're content with that, which is fine. You know, I'm totally okay with that. But like, you know, the things that always shooed me about the GHL stuff was the actual programming of it, and from the experience I had setting it up for somebody and helping them through it. I mean, I wasn't really happy with it. They weren't really happy with it, and it just felt like they settled a little bit, you know. And I said, okay, well, you chose it, so you got to run with it. You know, you're not gonna send this thing back to wherever he bought it from, Premium Aquatics or whatever. So we set it up, and he ended up using it for 1 or 2 years. But you know, he became an Apex user eventually. But I still think it's cool hardware, and I do like the aesthetics of it. You know, it
does look physically.
pretty.
It does look nice.
Yeah,
But
it looks pretty.
I've never had a chance to play with one. I just know when I was researching controllers back in the day, there's a pretty big following for it. So it's just interesting to hear the whole back and forth love of it.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that always struck me as weird, though, you know, as far as Neptune was concerned, is like like I mentioned before, the battery backup stuff. I see a lot of companies going towards solutions that offer a battery backup, especially ones that you know, create or supply a pump, you know what I mean? Which are like the life forces. Your heater cannot work, your return pump cannot work.
Yep.
But if you have flow inside the tank, your tank could probably be okay for a couple hours at the very least.
So
And that's my biggest fear
yeah.
is having a power outage when I'm not home and my pump's not turning on. I always wish that Neptune would make a little box
I'm
that
gonna do
you
it.
can plug into, like just a little brain that you can plug a wave or your pump into it, but it would know. That brain could plug into a battery somewhere, any battery, an open source battery of your choice, however much power your battery can supply, it'll plug in there. And if you lose power, it detects it, it knows 832 has no power. Bam, switch this
Yeah.
on, provide power to only these ports.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know what I mean?
at least for flow, at least like so I run the Ecotech pumps on my tank, right? So I have the Vectra and MP40s, and they all have a little power supply plug built into the controller, which I really appreciate with their product. It's one big thing for me. So as a power out, it automatically just swaps to that port. I have them directly connected to a giant 12-volt battery. So super duper easy way to do it. I mean, that only helps you have Ecotech pumps, but
Yeah, I was trying to stay within the one ecosystem, but
yeah.
I was disappointed that a feature like that didn't exist because even
Mm-hmm.
these new ice cap gyres, they have a battery solution now for them, like a backup battery solution for them. And I was trying to figure out if there was a way to use that for my waves as well. But really, I'm just kind of stuck with those two. Good thing is I use two gyro pumps in addition to my four waves, so at the very least, my gyros will work to provide me flow. But here in Charlotte, we have a lot of power outages, a lot of brownouts, a lot of weird stuff happens with power here. Um, and it scares me. I never had this issue in Jersey when I was in a giant apartment building, but here
Mm-hmm.
it kind of scares me a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know. Definitely never know. At the very least, just having at least a power head of the battery backup goes a long way, right? Just so you have that flow in your tank.
Yeah, that's probably what I'll eventually go to. But like I said before, I'm probably going to invest in the ice cap gyro battery backups
Yep,
in addition to my waves, just to know that at least two things will turn on in the event of an emergency.
exactly. And the super cheap getaway, I know you can buy whatchamacallit, air pumps that do that. Like just like an air pump and a bubbler that will kick on when the power goes out. But the only downside is you have to have a hose poking down your tank for it to actually work. But there's ones that have little built-in cutovers when it senses a power loss. So that's kind of cool. But that's the super cheap way of doing it. Underscore naming. Terrence is already gone, but I will ask about that in the future. For having underscores in the name. I don't necessarily. I know the modules are named that, but you can also rename them. So what you look at doesn't necessarily have that anymore. So, love the channel Daily Reefing. Daily Reefing has an awesome channel, guys. If you haven't checked him out, he has a giant tank and he does all kinds of crazy stuff. So definitely check him out. I love watching his crazy antics and overkill systems. If you guys have any last controller questions, let me know. I'm thinking I'm gonna pack her in pretty quick here. If you enjoyed it, as always, smash that thumbs up. If you're new, subscribe. If you have any questions, let us know in the chat. I wish I had an Apex had Ekoral UI and GH build quality. Just combined all three together.
That would be ideal. It'd be nice to have all the best of all three worlds built together. I think that'd be great. That's actually one of the first comments I made to a friend of mine when we were chatting about it was if they all have their advantages,
Mm-hmm.
and if you could pick one from the other, that's exactly would be great.
Yep. Like the Ekoral, like that, they're set up super quick and easy. Apex, you can do more with it. GHL hardware is beautiful. Pain in the butt to program from what I've got out of listening to you guys all night.
Not
So,
denying that, not
yep.
not not for a second. In all of my write-ups and reviews on them, that's primarily it. It just boils down to the doing that programming is difficult. I myself didn't have any of the hardware issues like they did. I did have a Wi-Fi issue, but I was able to figure out how to update that myself and get it taken care of. So
Mm-hmm.
luckily, I didn't have the same issues as the other two gentlemen did. But by far, hands down, it is the most difficult one to program for sure.
Yep. Very true. Genie saying Equal rocks in UI. Yeah, they did a good job on making theirs very easy to set it up. I do give them that.
Mhm.
Um, good baby. All right, guys. I think we answered all the questions. I'm at the hour and a half mark, and I'm trying to keep them to an hour for summertime.
No worries.
Yeah. So yeah, everyone that joined today, much appreciated. Everyone in the chat, thanks for hopping on, guys. And if you got any questions, leave them in the video comments, and we can get back to them. Either I'll just reply to them or get back to them in a future live stream. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for the stream, Dev.
Okay, thanks, guys.
That's great.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.